Cartethyia is finally rerunning in version 3.0, but with new regions come new power spikes, so is Cartethyia actually worth getting? That's what I'm going to be talking about in today's video by discussing Cartethyia's biggest pros and cons. The biggest reason for anyone to get Cartethyia is that she is the best theoretical DPS in the entire game when it comes to Tower of Adversity, still to this day having the highest DPS output of any team in the entire game. For both casuals and for quick swap tryhards, Cartethyia is gonna end up having the best performance of any team in the entire game because her damage output is just simply the highest. And if you're going to quick swap with her, none of the outro skills in her team have any sort of restrictions when it comes to swapping characters, unlike most hypercarry teams. Meaning that if you're a tryhard quick swapper, Cartethyia is going to be one of those characters that are going to give you a massive bang for your buck. But this does not prevent Cartethyia from still being the best DPS in the game when it comes to Tower of Adversity when you're playing her in a simple 1-2-3 rotation. Well, at least if you're comparing her to other characters that are also running a 1-2-3 rotation. Because, well, putting a 1-2-3 Cartethyia up against a quick swap triple fusion team is just kind of unfair skill-wise. But even if you do that, Cartethyia is most likely only going to be a little bit worse, if not just straight up equal, because her damage output is simply that high. Her Liberation finisher can hit for almost 400,000 damage rather easily in her premium teams. Her sustained damage output is also very solid for simply just how big her nukes can be. So really, this character has the highest damage output in the entire game. It's honestly not even close. Characters like Augusta and Galbrenna can say that they compete, but they are never going to actually defeat Cartethyia when it comes to her sheer performance in Tower. Another very nice thing about Cartethyia is that her AoE is actually really solid. Having good AoE in this game has become more and more important over time, and Cartethyia sure isn't disappointing when it comes to that factor. Because not only are her abilities pretty decent in AoE, she also has some pretty good grouping within her kit, primarily being the two skills she uses when she is in the fleur-de-lis form. Having grouping in your kit can be incredibly divisive, because some characters like Yang Yang or Jian Xin have grouping, but it's honestly not that valuable because of how short it lasts and how low the range is. Grouping is only as useful as the damage you can do while enemies are grouped, so it's really important that either your grouping lasts for a long time, or the DPS themselves can group enemies. And Cartethyia is one of those characters who is able to group enemies during her own rotation time, which is something that's really important when you're looking at a grouper. And once the enemies are grouped, Cartethyia is capable of stagnating them, and then also being able to hit all of them because her attacks just have very solid AoE. This means that outside of multi-wave content, where enemies are going to be constantly dying and respawning, the enemies really shouldn't get the chance to go far apart from each other. AoE simply has become more important now that we have the Tower 3rd floor, and Whimpering Waste has become a lot harder since its release. So Cartethyia having good AoE under her belt means that she's going to be at least decent in any AoE scenario. Sure, she isn't going to be perfect, which I'm going to dive into later, but she does have some very respectable AoE. Another thing that's incredibly nice for any Cartethyia player out there is that once she enters her fleur-de-lis mode, trying to stagger this character becomes near impossible. And that is actually pretty important. A lot of bosses within Withering Waves can be pretty aggressive and knock you over. This can end up leading to a massive damage loss, because anytime that you're not spending attacking, your buff timers will still go down. And if you're unlucky enough, some of your damage will even simply just not get the buffs anymore. The less time you spend sitting on your ass, the more time you can spend actually doing damage. Most characters will simply dodge, but dodging still takes time, even if not as much. So Cartethyia simply being able to just ignore that completely, and the only cost being the fact that she takes damage, is very nice. And even then, her taking damage is like, okay, sure, because she's an HP scaler, which means that she is going to be naturally capable of taking a lot more hits than any other main DPS would be able to. So this means that the second you enter Fleur-de-Lis mode, you can just do your combo and be completely fine with the result. The enemy can't stagger you, and realistically, especially if you have Chisa in the team, they can't kill you either. Another big deal for the people that already have Cartethyia is that her sequence lineup is one of the best in the entire game. Because sure, when you're looking at pure damage increases, Cartethyia sequences are kind of just whatever. But when you look at the additional effects that these sequences give you, oh dear. Because the S1 and S2 are gonna look a lot less impressive when you're looking at damage comparisons. But then when you see the fact that they're able to do the jobs of your teammates for you, that means you're gonna get a lot more flexibility with how you're able to play your Cartethyia. Her first 3 sequences were all designed in a way to where they're able to do the job that you would normally use your teammates for. Her first sequence allows you to not be reliant on Ciaccona's multi-wave area erosion application. Her S2 means you no longer need Arrow Rover or Chisa to increase the area erosion cap, and her third sequence allows you to apply area erosion during your fleur-de-lis mode, which means that Ciaccona's area erosion application is a lot less needed. Sure, having the teammates is still going to be a large damage increase to your S3 Cartethyia, but at S3, Cartethyia becomes able to solo all content in the game, which is something that not a lot of characters are able to say. But obviously it's not all sunshine and rainbows with this character, so let's get into that. First of all, I think the biggest issue that Cartethyia really has is that if you want to get the top tier performance I've been talking about this entire video, you do really want to have Ciaccona on your account. While Chisa has in fact lessened the burden by allowing you to run Arrow Rover and Chisa, using Ciaccona is still going to be a very large increase. You're not going to be able to get the top tier performance I've been talking about without having Ciaccona. Cartethyia deals a lot of damage through area erosion itself. It's not like Zani where her attacks count as area erosion, but area erosion is very vital to Cartethyia's damage output. And while she is able to apply it herself in the Cartethyia mode, she consumes it in the fleur-de-lis mode. This becomes an especially big issue when you realize that a very large part of Cartethyia's damage output, which is her liberation finisher, becomes a lot weaker without 5 area erosion stacks. So ultimately, being able to keep up area erosion is very vital to Cartethyia's team, and who better to help with that than Ciaccona? And then the second negative is the fact that Cartethyia is not as dominant in Whimpering Wastes as she is in Tower of Adversity. I've talked about Cartethyia's dominance in Tower of Adversity enough in this video, and I even said she had some pretty good AoE. So why is it that she's not as dominant in Whimpering Wastes? Well, it's because of a couple of factors. The biggest thing that's important in Whimpering Wastes is not just AoE, but it's also having near constant damage output. Because it's a multi-wave game mode, enemies should be constantly dying and respawning, which means you want to be doing good damage at all times. This is why Frolova is so absurdly dominant, because Hecate allows her to do damage 100% of the time. This is also why Yuno is very strong for Augusta's performance in Whimpering Wastes, because Yuno's personal damage allows her to kill waves of enemies on her own. It's also why the Mono Fusion team is so strong, because you've essentially got 3 DPSs on your team. Cartethyia, however, is very hyper carry based, because almost all of the damage in the team is going to be during her field time. And because the game mode is so multi-wave based, it means that you're not going to be able to properly stack up your area erosion stacks unless your Cartethyia is S1, which is going to be a pretty big damper on Cartethyia's performance. And finally, a very large amount of Cartethyia's damage output comes from her Resonance Liberation, which is just one big attack, during which all timers and respawns are paused, which means that a very large amount of Cartethyia's damage will be wasted, because you're not really able to use it on multiple waves of enemies, thus meaning that you're realistically only going to wipe one wave with it, and the rest of the damage is going into the void. Cartethyia is still a very strong character within Whimpering Wastes, but she is by no means top tier. But that's just my opinion. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. And while you're down there, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions, be sure to join my Discord server, which is linked in the description. And if you just want to see more of me, you should check out my second channel, which is also linked in the description. I don't post very often, but when I do, it's just kind of what I'm passionate about. But that'll be all from me. Peace.